So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. So we are now live on this page. We will start very soon. So the format of the session will be the first part will be presented by Louise, and she will share some ideas on the topic, and then we will invite you to talk and maybe ask some questions or some comments. So we'll invite you to talk in the second part. So welcome everyone. Mishka, Tashmira, and Divanji. I hope I am pronouncing your names correctly. So hi everyone. So this is a very interesting topic, and there is a lot of research and ideas published about it, and I think it's very important for us to read and be updated about the power of artificial intelligence and the potential of AI in education and teaching, especially foreign language instruction. So as I said, we'll give the first part to Dr. Louise, and then you will be, invited to participate, to ask questions. Maybe you can write down some notes and possible ideas to use in your classroom with your students, because we would like this session to impact you in your classroom, and maybe you can write some ideas you would like to try, or maybe you have already tried some ideas in your classroom, and you would like to share them with the guest speaker. So hi Louis, you can do a little introduction about yourself, then we now live on Facebook, and then you can share perhaps some slides on the topic or some links, and then we will give the floor to participants to ask questions, as I said, and to engage in the discussion. Just a quick reminder that the main purpose of the Everyone Academy is to encourage online collaboration and empower English teachers, and engage in conversations and discussions about different topics, especially technology integration. So Louis, welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Louise Ohashi, and I'm based in Tokyo. I teach here at a university that's not so far from my home. And I have a background in not only language education, but also the use of digital technology in language education. And I'm also very interested in learner autonomy and how we as teachers can empower our students to take steps forward in their language learning. So that's a little bit about my background. Recently, I've become interested in AI, firstly through machine translation, and more recently through ChatGPT. So I'll be focusing on those two topics today. Yeah. And Aziz and I prepared a series of questions that we wanted to explore together. So maybe the easy way, Aziz, would be if you ask the questions, choose them from our list, and then I can elaborate on them.
Yes, maybe we can start with the general question before diving into details. So,
okay.
The artificial intelligence. So if we can define it in simple terms for people who are listening and attending the session, what do you think the best, a quick definition of
Well, it's the ability, I suppose, of a computer. I mean, robots too, but let's think of it in terms of what we are using as teachers, maybe of a computer controlling output. So tasks are done by the computer. It makes the decisions, but those decisions were originally set by humans. So the artificial intelligence uses the data that it's been trained with to do something, to do a task that we direct it to do, basically.
yes, so it's basically like it's a simulation of what's going on in our brain.
Well, in a way, I suppose, our brain has all of the data of our, our life experiences, and then we draw on that to do things. Whereas in the case of artificial intelligence, it's drawing on whatever data set it's been trained with. And this can be something that really gives opportunities, but it can also have limitations because the output will only be as good as the data it was trained on.
Yes, we can maybe talk a little bit about your background in technology integration, and can you talk a little bit about that?
I'm sorry about
Your background in technology integration
Okay.
and
Yeah, sure.
digital technology in general.
Yeah, well, I started out really simply doing things like getting my students to write blog posts and comment on them back in about 2010, somewhere like that. And little by little, I started trying to find ways that I, as a teacher, could integrate technology into my classes so that students could have experiences of using English outside of class, because class time is very, very limited. And I wanted them to have those opportunities. And so over the years, I looked into many different tools that could be used for listening practice, for reading, writing, speaking practice. And motivation is something that can really change the course of our learning journey. So I try to look for tools that can be really interesting and fun to use, so that students can feel like they want to use them. And also materials that are available at different levels so that they're appropriate for students and they don't feel blocked. When something's too difficult, we can give up very easily. But if something's at our level or just above our level, we can stay motivated to use it. So yeah, that's a little bit about it. I also speak several languages, and I like to explore digital technology from the perspective of a learner as well. And so I use a lot of the tools that I recommend to my students to learn different languages myself, so that I have the perspective of a student. And I really recommend to teachers, if you are going to introduce tools to your students, try to get the user experience, so to speak. Try using them yourself. You'll notice the limitations when you actually take that perspective, but you'll also notice the affordances. You'll start to see, oh, we could use it in this way. If I do it for that, that is possible. Those kind of things can be very, very helpful for us as teachers.
So there is a large and growing body of literature which stresses the importance of artificial intelligence on language teaching and learning. Why do you think teachers and students or schools in general are a little bit reluctant to implement it? Or maybe they are using it the wrong way, as it has been indicated by some reports, or they are misusing it?
Yeah, I think there are numerous reasons. One of them is that when we as teachers don't feel confident that we have the knowledge or skill to use something, we reject it. That's pretty common. Before we have training or have experience using something, it's very difficult to integrate. And often in workplaces, we don't have access to that kind of training. Sometimes we don't have access to the software that we need, or we don't have stable Wi-Fi, or those kinds of issues. Those are definitely things that prevent us from doing it. Also, there's a fear sometimes of things just not working on the day. So we prepare, but with technology, there can always be some issue, like the web page doesn't load, or the Wi-Fi is moving really slowly. And when teachers have an experience like that, and they're in front of their classroom, you know, at the front, their students are watching them and it's not working, it can be very embarrassing, very frustrating, and you can lose time in the class. So those kind of negative experiences can block us. So I think those are some of the things that get in the way. As for how we can overcome them, we need to have more open dialogues in our workplaces about what's needed in terms of facilities and in terms of training. We may find that for example, the administration, the administrative body at our workplace doesn't take proactive steps, but maybe we have a colleague who's very, very good at using technology and can help us, or we attend, you know, professional development sessions like this one today that you're in. These are things that can give us skills and knowledge so that we have confidence to try using new tools. And then we spend time ourselves outside of sessions, just playing with the technology, getting familiar with it, getting comfortable with it.
I know that you have been researching the machine translation or you know, tools that you know, translate things online. What have you found so far?
Well, I did a study here in Japan with 153 university teachers who are teaching different languages here, foreign languages. And from that study, I found that that teachers by and large are using machine translation in their own lives and understand the benefits and the limitations of it. But far fewer of them are using it in their classes. And the reasons for this really vary. Some of them just don't want to expose students to it because they think it might be a tool that could be used for cheating later. Some of them don't know how to effectively do it. They haven't had any training themselves on it, on how to show them the learning potential of the tool. So they might have used machine translation just to speed up their work process, for example, reading work emails. But in an educational perspective, you have to think how machine translation can be used to actually learn, and teachers don't have training on that yet. I did a workshop at the GELT International Conference here in Japan last November, and I showed teachers different ways that they can use machine translation tools inside classrooms to help students do different activities, for example, writing activities and so forth. And I can put a copy of those slides in the chat if you like. Aziz, would you like me to add them there for the participants?
Yes, sure.
Okay, I will do that. And inside that, it actually has a lot of links that tell you, for example, about the background of machine translation, like why it suddenly got better a few years ago. It's connected to the neural networks, and also that give you some activities that you can do, and some links to some articles that you can read if you're interested. I've just added it to the chat now for anybody who'd like to check those slides out.
Yes, okay. So for those people who are attending with us in the Zoom meeting, if you would like maybe to prepare some questions, because we will invite you to talk, ask a question, or maybe a comment about this discussion or this conversation. Yes. So so do you have like any advices or tips on the use of machine translation, and also especially it's some of its limitations? For example, if we talk about Google Translate. It's sometimes it's not accurate all the time, and sometimes it really gives something not what we wanted. So it gives a different interpretation of what we mean.
Right, right. And one of the things that we can do to overcome that is think about the way that we input whatever we write as the input. The way that we write ourselves in our own language and the way that we should write for a translation tool are different. For example, in Japanese, it is very, very common for the subject to be dropped. So I don't need to put I in a sentence. I can just put ate dinner and I don't need to put I. And if I, in Japanese, just write that and I translate it to English, well, the machine translator has to guess who the subject is. They could say he ate dinner, she ate dinner. So doing little things like adding the subject, making it explicit, really make a difference. And for example, in English, if you have the word R-E-A-D, the word could be read, past tense, or it could be read, present tense. And the computer doesn't know, do you mean I read books or I read books? It doesn't understand. So you have to put extra context. So for example, you could use the word yesterday, and then the computer will know that it's supposed to translate into the past tense, not into the present tense. So when we are actually inputting something into a translation tool, we have to be careful about those kinds of things. And it's also really helpful if we have really long sentences, sometimes thinking about where to break them into two so that the subject or the object doesn't get lost by the computer and that it can catch our ideas more clearly. So teaching students how to do this, how to effectively do this, because in the future, they're going to be in workplaces and they're going to want to draw on these real world tools in their real lives. Giving them the skills to do that, I think, is quite important. If we do want to use it for actually improving writing skills, for example, though, there's a process we could go through with our students where they, for example, I'm going to screen share with you. Is that okay if I screen share?
Yes.
Okay, so what I would suggest, for example, this is one of the things that was in the slides that I shared. This is from a different one. Okay, so for example, I get my students in a writing class to write in their L1, that means English, for 5 minutes. Okay, then after that, they write down the word count to see how much they were able to write. And it's only 5 minutes. They can't write a lot, maybe 100 words if they're lucky. And then the next step would be to self-edit. So they look at it, with a bit of time and try to correct anything that they notice is wrong, like the spelling, like the grammar, like maybe some vocabulary. And then they can use a spell check or grammar check to check out as well. Then they copy it and they put it into something like Google Translate. They put it into machine translation. And at this point, they read the output and then they compare that with what they had actually written. So they should correct the errors that came from the L1. When they see it, in my case, in my context, in Japanese, if they put what they've got in English and they look at the Japanese part and they notice, oh, that's really weird, something's wrong, they can often pick up a mistake that they made in English. And so they keep going until the Japanese side now looks right, it's covering the right information. And then they can check alternative suggestions. So it may be that if they change something, they will be able to get a synonym, for example. They can click in Japan, we have access to a translator that's really sophisticated called DeepL. and you can click and get synonyms. And when you click and get those synonyms, it will change it on both sides. Then you back translate it. So you swap it from, in my context, Japanese to English to make sure that the English is still correct. You keep editing if you would like to edit it further, and then you transfer the corrections back to your original text. So instead of copying and pasting it from the translator when it looks good, actually one by one make the changes so that you're noticing them. And then at the end, highlight the changes in the edited text. And as a bonus, you could make a brief note of points to avoid or to focus on the next time. So that kind of activity is something that I did with students in an academic reading and writing class. And we used to do that once a week. I taught them twice a week. And so once a week, they would do that, and they would keep one Word file. And every week they would add to it. And over the period of a semester, a few things happen. And this is something I did in parallel with my students. So I did it in Italian as they were doing it in English. And so something they noticed and I noticed is over time, we start to write more. We start to notice our key errors, the things that we were getting wrong. And we start to be able to expand on the vocabulary. We were often using more simple vocabulary at the beginning, like the word very might be there many times, but start to be able to change the vocabulary that we're using so it's not as repetitive when we're writing. So that's a way to effectively use machine translation instead of just using it to copy and paste something and not really learn anything.
Yes, maybe we can also exploit the mistakes or the errors done by machines and
Yep.
use them like teaching opportunities for students. Or maybe we can give them two kind of versions. One is written by teachers, and the other is translated by machines. And
Right.
they can do like comparing the two versions.
Right, exactly. So that using the students, critical thinking skills is important. So sure, we have this output, this feedback from a teacher or this feedback from a machine. But at the end, if I'm the student, I have to make a decision on what I'm going to use. Just because the machine translation tool tells me this option is possibility, it doesn't mean that that's what I now believe and use. I need to draw on my knowledge. I need to ask others before I can be certain of the final output. And that's the same with ChatGPT. ChatGPT is putting a lot of information out there, some of it factual, some of it not. And when we get back information from this new form of AI, we have to really apply our critical thinking skills to it instead of just accepting it as it is. And that involves us editing, it involves us fact checking, those kinds of things.
Yes, we will talk a little bit about ChatGPT. I know it's something that has been released recently, and there is a lot of talk and controversy about it. Some people or say that it's beneficial, and the others, indicate some limitations. So first of all, what is it, and what are the possible advantages for language teaching?
Well, it's a chatbot, which means that we as humans can input something and it will respond to us in a kind of style of chatting, like person A, person B, person A, person B, like this. And so how we can actually use it depends on our creativity. There's a lot of things that we can do. A colleague of mine and myself, we put together a questionnaire for university level language teachers earlier this year. And we were really interested in finding out about what teachers knew about ChatGPT. So early, it had only been released for 3 months by then. This was released in November, end of November. And we were really interested in knowing about their familiarity with it, if they had used it before or if they'd heard about it, that type of thing. And we wanted to know how likely they were to use it for generating language learning resources, to use it for assessment, and to use it for guiding students with self-study, because those are areas that I think that we will be able as language educators to use it to some extent in the future. So I want to give you an example of the kinds of ways we could use it to actually, for example, generate materials. So just before this session started today, I decided to put in a prompt, and I'll share that with you now. Okay. So I put this prompt in here. It says, I wrote this part here. This part is me. I want you to make, I made a mistake here, make or create, but it understood me. That's a wonderful thing. A lesson plan for my English language learners. And I told the aim is to teach them to give compliments and respond to them. And then I explained that I wanted them to do it both in formal and informal situations. And I chose the topics that I wanted them to talk about, to give and receive compliments about. And I was very specific about what I wanted from the AI tool. I addressed it as a person. I want you to introduce 10 key, and again, I've got a mistake here. I want to show you that even if you do make small mistakes, it's going to understand. So 10 key expressions for giving and responding to compliments. And then I asked it to rank them in order of formality. And then I asked it to make 2 short role plays that have all words shown, and then another 2 role plays that have gaps. So it gave me a lot of output. This part that you'll see next, that starts here, this section, look how long it is. This popped out in about 60 seconds, okay? What it's done is it's given me the level, which I didn't specify, I should have. This is to show you how we put in a prompt and then we make changes. I could say to the AI after this, okay, please repeat the lesson plan for beginners. Please repeat the lesson plan for an advanced group, yeah? And I didn't say how long it was supposed to take, but it made a lesson plan that estimated, the things I would need for it and how I would do it in terms of a timeline. So it gave some warm-up activities. It introduced how I could present the material to the students. It had some practice tasks there. It gave me ideas for production, and it gave me some ideas for wrap-up. Now, I don't need to do all of these things. This is generating ideas that I, as a teacher, might look at and edit and decide what to do myself. And here are the role play scripts that it came up with. It suggested that the first one is shown to practice their pronunciation and intonation, and that the second one has gaps. So it gave an informal one with expressions like, hey, I love your, as a compliment. It looks great on you, as a compliment. And this one is quite informal. And in the second one, yeah, excuse me, I must say, your pronunciation was very impressive. It's very, very different in terms of register. And then it gave it again with some gaps. Now, it'll stop at some point where it can only produce a limited amount of text. And when that happens, it got to here and it stopped. I just said, okay, please finish the lesson plan. And it remembers 3,000 words. You can keep chatting with it. You sometimes have to tell it again to go back and remember something. So it just picked it up again and it continued the plan, and it gave some kind of optional follow-up task. And then it ranked them as I had requested. So it ranked them into formal and informal, and which ones were more formal, which ones were less formal. And then I gave it an idea, okay, write the 2 lists above again with the essential parts included and a gap for the parts students can replace. My instruction here was too unclear. I wanted to show you how if we're not specific, the computer won't understand. For example, here, what are the essential parts? How can the computer understand what the essential parts are? I have to explain what the essential parts are. And so the first time it did it, and it hasn't really put the gap in the spot where I would like it. Because, hey, what goes here? In the example, hey was, where was it? I love your new hairstyle, but I really wanted it to keep the, hey, I love, because that's the compliment. That's the essential part. But I didn't explain clearly. So it just took out randomly something. Yeah. You can prompt it once more. Please try again. I want to keep the parts that directly express a compliment and exclude the parts that are about what is being complimented. Now, this is an example of a more direct prompt. And this time, you've got things like, it's amazing, you're great, you're so talented. Something was very impressive. If I may say, something is quite impressive. This time it's a bit more tailored to what I wanted. And you can easily add more. I wrote to it, thank you at the end, and it told me I was welcome. But you can see how we can do those kinds of activities. As teachers, whatever your topic area is, if you wanted a list of expressions or vocabulary, you can ask for it. If you want it to put it into a table for you, you can ask it. If you want it to, I don't know, create role plays or create some kind of diagram, you can ask it. There's lots of things you can do with this. And so you might have a textbook that you're using and you want to create a worksheet that goes with that content. If you direct it, it can do it. And then you have to edit it yourself and decide what parts are useful for you and what parts are not. Yeah.
We have a comment from Ali on the Facebook Live.
Okay.
So he said that sometimes Google Translation is not reliable because of the shades of meanings a word might have and the
Right,
context
exactly.
where a word is used. So he's talking about the context and the different shades of meanings. And yeah, what do you think about that?
Yes, for sure, because there are different nuances in, with vocabulary, and it can be helpful if you find, for example, if you list just a word sometimes or something very short without context, it won't always choose the best translation. So sometimes if you're adding extra information, like a longer part, for example, instead of just saying she is pretty, for example, if you added in a longer information, a piece of longer information, a longer chunk of information that was maybe 2 or 3 sentences, it can get more of the context. And because it's using the neural networks, it draws on millions and millions and millions of data sets that have been previously seen, and it predicts the word that usually would come next. Yeah. So pretty, she is pretty, could mean beautiful. It could be about looks. But if the next word was supposed to be tired, in that case, pretty means quite, like she's pretty tired. She's quite tired. So if you just put the word pretty into Google Translate, it might just come up with a translation of beautiful, but pretty can also mean quite. Yeah. So without that context, she is pretty tired or she is pretty, it won't know the difference of what you are looking for with the word pretty. So yeah, it's important to give a little bit more context to it. And also we can use things like a thesaurus to then go and look at alternatives for those translations too.
Yes, so we now we can give some time for people who are now joining us on Facebook Live, or and also people who are attending this session in Zoom session. So you can maybe you have a question or two, or just a quick comment about this conversation about machine translation, about ChatGPT, or any other ideas you would like to share with us. So Olena, go ahead. You can open your mic and
Okay. Hi everyone, and You know, I have some maybe interesting question. How do you think is it's appropriate to use this artificial intellects technologies for the younger learners as in primary school, for example?
I actually think that there is a age limit for using ChatGPT. I think that to have an account from memory, it was 18. So if it was used, I think it would be used from the teacher's side and controlled by the teacher rather than a student having an account. So something I've done with my daughter, and she's in primary school, is we tried using ChatGPT together to do a creative story. And so we put in some details about ourselves, and we're going to visit family in Australia soon. So we put in some details about the story, and then we asked ChatGPT to create the first part of the story, and it did it. And so as a reading task, like a joint reading task, we could do those kinds of things with students and ask our students, okay, what would you like to go in next in the story? And have that, you know, become a joint writing task. And with young kids, having something that is drawing on their imagination, but helping them to, you know, write beyond their current skill level could be a way of tapping into creativity, building motivation, that kind of thing. So it could be something to experiment with.
Okay, thank you. I think that it will help to form more creative kids, and you know, kids in our times sometimes more efficient in internet, in computering, even the parents or older people.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's always a risk when we use the internet because we can't be sure of the output. You know, we enter something, but we don't know what's going to come back to us. So there's always a need for caution and to use things you know, in very safe ways. And I mean, I wouldn't give my daughter access to my ChatGPT account to use alone. I think this is something that she needs guidance with. But I think using tools under guidance, you know, with teacher control in that kind of way, or using it to generate materials for the students who are in, for example, primary school, would be
Mhm.
something different. Yeah, I think the technology is still too untested for us to turn it over to kids at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Because you know, I'm from Ukraine, and now we have some uh, war in Ukraine. So even the primary school now is on the remote learning, and our teachers try to find some new ways to more active, to more creative, form to more creative kids, and that's why it's very essential if you have some experience in using it for the younger. It's thank you very much for your answer.
No, no, you're welcome. What's really interesting is that we can use this tool to translate into lots of different languages. If we wanted to then take something and get it translated into another language, we just have to tell it. And it is very, very effective at doing this. I've found the way I've played around with it in Italian has just shown me how skillful it is. So I think that that's something that might be worth considering, how we could do this in languages that are relevant to our context. So I'm going to just try this now with I'm going to ask it to, maybe you can judge and tell me. I'm going to ask it to put those last prompts I did for the role play into your language and see what it comes up with. So you can tell me just like in real time whether this works or not. I'll screen share and we'll see. Please translate the role plays I entered above into Ukrainian. I don't speak this, so you have to tell me if it's coming out with something useful or not, okay, Olena? How do they look? Olena, can you see it?
Just just a moment. My screen. Okay. I did something that disappeared. Okay. View. Yeah. Yeah, I can see. And that yes, it's informal and formal. This is like it looks like very good.
Okay. Well, let's see how they come out in Arabic.
That's a good result.
And see, you can see in real time now how quickly it does it, much faster than a human could do this. I couldn't make a pen work this fast. So what's it like in Arabic? Is it coming out okay?
Yes, it's great. Yes.
Okay, so we can use this and translate the materials, or we could even ask it to, in the lesson plan, list instructions in Arabic and list the activities in English, for example. So this is where, the limitations of this tool lie in our own imagination. If our imagination of how to use it is limited, its output and its usefulness for us will be limited. But if we can give it directions in ways that are going to be very helpful, then we have a powerful tool at our fingertips. Yeah.
Yes, very, very powerful. Yes, perhaps we can move to another question.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, so Samandini or Kashmira, can you go second? If you have a question or a comment. Or Mishka, maybe. So there is also yes, some people think that ChatGPT is a threat to teachers. Is that true?
Sorry,
some like there's a comment on Facebook page. Some people think that ChatGPT is a threat to teachers. Is that true?
Well, it's been said because there's a lot of things that it can do, right? And I think that the answer is no, not to teachers in general, not to the teaching profession in general, but something that I do believe is that eventually, in time, that if we don't embrace technology, if we are teachers who don't embrace technology, that we will be replaced by teachers who do embrace technology. So there's still going to be a role for teachers. I mean, years ago when the internet came out, there was the same kind of fear. Oh, there's an internet now, everybody can check everything. You don't need to go to school anymore. And of course, that wasn't true. And then when the MOOCs came out, the very large online, free courses, well, people won't go to university anymore. And of course, that's not true. And so now we have this new wave of technology. And, it's not going to be true that we don't need teachers anymore, but there'll be certain things that we can now delegate to a machine. And the people who are skillful at using machines are going to be the people who have very safe jobs. And the people who kind of, reject technology will still be needed. But in the future, I think that as this becomes more and more integrated into our lives, we'll be a bit lost and a bit left out if we don't learn how to use it skillfully as well. So That would be my response to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the people attending the Zoom, or just a comment, or just you would like to say something about it? We still have 10 minutes.
Yeah. Or if you have any experiences using ChatGPT and you wanted to share them, it would be interesting to hear your experiences.
So if I may,
Yes, please.
I found ChatGPT recently, and honestly, it never really occurred to me to use it for language teaching. Because I was just like, oh, it'll give suggestions, and it never occurred to me to actually ask for suggestions for language activities, which is something I struggle with still. So does ChatGPT suggest it? Can it suggest activities for any sort of proficiency level as well?
Yep, it can. It might not always align with what you want, but for example, let's ask it now. I will open it up and we'll do a demonstration together. So I'm going to ask you, can you give me suggestions of activities to do with which level would you say? Intermediate, elementary, advanced?
Elementary.
Okay. Elementary level English learners. And what's our goal? I want to help them have simple conversations about maybe their hobbies, for example.
Yeah, that'll work.
I want you to suggest 10 different activities. Activities, TIVIT, I could do with them in class. Let's see what it comes up with. Okay, so it's coming up with an idea about hobbies matchup with flashcards and a survey. Students walk around the room and ask their classmates what their favorite hobby is. A game of charades, a game of Pictionary, a bingo game, a hobbies sentence starters game. Okay, so after I get my 10 ideas, I'm going to choose one of them. And let me say, for example, this one, this one here, have students walk around the classroom and ask their classmates what their favorite hobby is. After gathering data, they create a graph or a chart. Okay, so I want create a worksheet for the second activity you suggested. And if I have some ideas about it myself, what I want in the worksheet, I can tell it, but I can get it to come up with its own version first. And it's probably going to make a worksheet for me. Okay, and so you can see that it'll give the instructions that we can put on the worksheet. It tells the students what to do at the top. It has a space for them to write the name and the hobby, and then the questions or the graph instructions at the end. So you can see that we can just keep pushing and pushing it to do different things for us. Okay, so I could ask, write the instructions in Arabic and leave the worksheet table in English, for example. Let's see if it actually understands that. So you could adjust things to suit your own, your own working environment in this way. And again, you'll have to tell me if these are actually correct in Arabic or not. Could anyone let me know? Does that look right? Aziz, what do you think? Does the Arabic work there? I think you're on mute. I can't hear you, Aziz.
Yes, I think it's working pretty well. But I think Anouk Pereira is what's your first
Ah,
language?
my first language is Sinhala.
Is what?
Sorry.
It's Sinhala. I'm from Sri Lanka.
Okay.
You are from Sri Lanka. Okay.
Translate it to Sri Lankan. Is Sri Lankan the right language there?
No, the first language that we use is called Sinhala.
Can you spell it for me?
Sinhala.
S-I-N?
Hala.
S-I-N-H-A-N-A. Like this?
L, not N.
You can,
L-A.
Yeah,
can
I'm
write
sorry,
it
I have a
in
cold.
chat
Okay,
box.
let's see. Something that's really interesting is that I heard, I don't know how true it is, but I heard that there was an error. Sometimes what happens is sometimes it times out like it has now. And so you have to refresh the browser. And what you can do is go to the final chat that you were in and you just copy it again. So I just went up to the sidebar on the left where all of my previous chats are. I clicked on it to bring it back up and it brought it back up. What I was saying is that I heard that it translates into languages that you won't find, for example, translated well in some of the translation tools. Some people had said that it translates minority languages better than, for example, Google Translate. So I don't know. I can't read this language at all. So you'd have to tell me if this is translating well in Sinhala. Is it?
I think it is for the moment. I think it is.
Okay. So it's interesting to see that we can try this with lots of different languages. Now, how could we use that as a student? We looked a little bit at the teacher side, but as a student, I've tried using it myself as a learner to have conversations. So I did it for chat practice in Italian, and we could use it to generate as a student lists of different ways to say the same thing. We could use it as a draft of something that we are trying to write. And then we could, for example, have a start draft that's written by this and then add to it, or we could do it the opposite way. So we could have a draft that we start by ourselves, put it in here and ask it to suggest alternative ways to do it. For example, make this paragraph more formal, make this paragraph more casual, and then compare the two drafts. So again, just like with the ways that we can use it as teachers, the ways we can use it for learning as students or for guiding our students to learn are really just limited by our imagination and the quality of our prompts. When we get better at writing the prompts, giving the instructions to the tool, then the output that we get is going to improve as well. So what I recommend to everybody here is talk to colleagues, talk to friends who are using this and ask them how they're using it. Or go into things like on Facebook, there's a group called ChatGPT Experts. I joined it just to get ideas, and I'll put it in the chat of Zoom, the link for that page. I've just seen so many different examples from people about how they're using ChatGPT. Now, that's not a group for teachers, but the way that people are using it worldwide now in different areas of life is giving me ideas about how I could use it as a teacher. So I think that exposing yourselves to the ways that other people are using it will really feed your imagination, like on how you could use it yourself. Yeah.
Yes, and we also have a blog on our website, and we share the impact of the sessions that we do. So maybe if you tried this tool in your classroom, and you can send us, you know, a short article or a paragraph or your takeaways, you know, and what was good about the tool, what was not good, etc. The challenges you faced in your classroom, etc. So we still have some more minutes for questions before we close the session. There is a comment on Facebook from Nasir, who said that you think this application can be used for scientific researching or writing maybe scientific papers. So how the journals could detect the originality of papers or maybe detecting plagiarism, etc.
Well, there's been, concerns, and it's already been discovered that people are using it to generate content and not specify that it came from AI. And there have been reports of this being done in academia. There's been reports of this being done in other fields. And there are now AI detection tools. So OpenAI made ChatGPT, but they also made something to detect whether something was written by AI or written by a human. At this point, though, the detection rate's pretty faulty. It doesn't reliably tell us whether it was written by a human or if it was written by AI. But I imagine that in the future, those kinds of tools are going to become more effective at finding that. Perhaps there will be something embedded into it. I'm not sure how this will happen, but there is work in progress in that area. Also, there have been calls for people to cite ChatGPT. So if you have used it, to list it as a citation and list to what extent it was used. So this could be something else that we see happening in the future. It's kind of, we touched on machine translation before, so I put the article that I talked to you about earlier with the 153 teachers at university level. I put the URL and the citation for that into the chat, and I added a copy of the article. If anybody's interested in that, then you can check that out to find out some more information about that side of things.
So Budini said that it is a good practice to teach learners to use this chat GPT in their works by their own, or maybe should the teachers control this? I think we have already covered this, that the teacher should...
Well, I think it depends on the level of the students, though. If you're teaching at university level, for example, like I am, I think teacher guidance is useful, but then students can go and play with it by themselves and use it. But if you're teaching at the elementary school level, it's a very different matter. So I with my own students, that the academic year in Japan has just ended, so I haven't used it with my students. It was released in November and my classes were finishing in December, and I wasn't even aware of it at the beginning in November. So I will start using it in April when I return to classes, and I plan to spend some time figuring out what's going to be effective and what kind of ground rules there will be about its usage, because clearly it's a real world tool that they can access themselves. But I don't want essays to be submitted that were just generated by this tool and given to me. But I do think there are effective ways that they can use it. And I want to explore those together with my students and discuss with them about what they see as inappropriate use, what they see as something helpful to them, and generate ideas with them. I get the feeling that I'm going to learn a lot from them about how to use this tool well, in equal measures to what I can share with them. So having those kind of open discussions with our students and drawing on their creativity and adding it to ours is going to lead to better results, I think.
Yes, it's always good to see the classroom as a laboratory for testing new tools, for implementing technology. And
Right.
the best way to do this is with your students, because
Mhm.
you discover the potential of the tool, and also you discover the limitations and
Right.
how to overcome them.
Right. And by
So
and large, by and large, I trust my students and I see myself in some kind of partnership with them for their learning. And often, I mean, I know that cheating has become a big thing in the media about, students, the risk of cheating now that these kinds of tools are available. But sometimes we have to question why cheating happens. It signifies lack of engagement in the task, or perhaps it signifies that the task was too difficult for the learners, because human motivation tells us that when we are engaged in something and when we're doing something that's within our ability level, that generally we're not going to cheat. We're going to try to do that task to the best of our ability. So perhaps there are some questions about the tasks we're setting if we find our students are just cheating with this tool. And I think that that's a call for us to reconsider the kind of tasks that we're setting, and to change them if necessary, and to then focus on ways that we can use the technology in a very effective manner.
so we still have 1 or 2 minutes for quick questions, and I know that we have one here from Mishka. So how can graphs be interpreted in chat GPT?
Rash,
So
that's a good question. I've seen some people, a lot of people have strong background in coding and so forth and know how to direct the tool really well, have been producing things that initially it said it couldn't produce. I don't know if it's actually true or not, but I saw that it could produce pictures. Some people were getting it to produce images. So I'm not really sure about the graphs and so forth, what it can do with those. I haven't explored it, but take that as a homework task, give it a try and see, and then
yes,
report.
I think it's we need some background in coding, because yeah, I think this, because I read somewhere that there are certain codes you paste and then it can be changed.
Yeah, I've seen some people who, in that group I mentioned before on Facebook, that Chat GPT experts group, there are some coders in that group, and I've seen threads where people are sharing codes to get it to generate things that that I don't know how to get it to generate. But you can actually ask it itself. You can ask Chat GPT, give me the code for this, and then okay, now use that code to do this. So again, it's the limits of our creativity that are going to tell us the point that we can't go past. We have to keep pushing and trying and learning through trial and error, through collaboration, until we can get this tool to do the things that we want it to do.
So we will take just 2 quick questions, maybe from Omali, who has just joined, or Samindi, or you can just type it if you don't want to speak. This is like a lovely discussion. Ben Abdu said that this is like a general question. Said that will technology replace humans, and or more specifically, if we are using like artificial intelligence to make our lives easy and facilitate our task, and automate tasks. Do you think this maybe will surpass the human intelligence? That's
There's
like a
fears.
general question.
Yeah, there's fears of this. It's like the old 90s movie, The Terminator, like the Terminator 2. I remember in particular with the humanoid, like part robot, part human, and There's a lot of speculation about, the future, what's going to happen if humans are going to delegate too much to AI, and they're not going to be needed anymore, and that eventually the machines will become much, much smarter than the humans and self-controlling. And well, who knows what's going to happen in the future. I'm not envisaging something like that, and I'm certainly not hoping for it. But I did read something this week about AI controlling robots. So trying to get things like a chatbot to control other things, to do tasks outside of the chat. And so that kind of new technology is being explored right now. So in the next few years, it'll be very interesting to see what actually happens.
Okay. So perhaps we come to the end of our session. So thank you everyone for attending. Just a quick reminder that if you maybe you are interested in getting a certificate of participation, you can just write your takeaways from the session, and we will send you one a free certificate to your emails. So this is just a way to encourage you to write your takeaways and and implement some of the ideas in your classroom. And your takeaways will be published on the Everyone Academy blog. So so that other people can also read them and benefit from your ideas as well. So Louis, do you have like any closing comments, tips before we close this session?
I think that my best advice to everybody is to, as I said, be very creative in your use of this tool, and be very critical of it. When you get the output, decide what of it is useful, what of it is not useful, and encourage your students to do the same thing. So if we go forward with creativity and critical thinking in mind, I think that we can really take advantage of this tool.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. And I know that there are so many ideas to discuss in this topic, and we perhaps 60 minutes is not really enough to cover the topic, and to talk even about ChatGPT, because it's full of ideas.
Right. Oh, sorry, I just remembered one thing. I just put in the chat a URL for a something called Think Tank. It's a publication over here in Japan. And next week, they are going to be releasing an 81-page special edition on ChatGPT that's connected to language learning. And it's an open access free publication. So if you're interested, you can use that link. And if you check back in a few days, you'll be able to see the article there. I wrote one of the articles in it, and I've had a look at some of the other articles that have been written by other authors, and looks like there's going to be a lot of interesting ideas in there. So yeah, you're very welcome to access that if you think it would be useful.
So great applause for Louis, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yes, so I'm sure we'll learn a lot about this through your research papers, and through the work you do with your students and teachers locally and across the globe.
Okay, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here today. Many
So
thanks.
yes, thank you everyone, and see you in another webinar very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Take care.